Hey everybody. I want to do some demoing here of some basic error checking. And we're at a point now where you should be putting error checking in your code. And the type of error checking that I'm talking about here is, there's really two types. The first type is the correct data type, but not a valid value. Sorry, I should put this as a comment because it's going to do crazy colors here. An example of this would be division by 0. Another example of this would be a negative value for an age. And so you think about some of the programs we've written so far, some basic math or this body mass calculator. The body mass calculator would be an example where if somebody enters a negative height or a negative weight, that's not legal for this formula. A negative value for a square root, a 0 if you're dividing. These problems exist all over the place, and you must be able to handle this type of error checking. And so going forward in this class, I will be starting to test your programs with invalid data to make sure that you're doing that error checking. So we're gonna demo that first. And so here's what we'll do here. Let me get that out of the way. So step 1, check for a value being negative and print an error message. There are different ways for you to exit to handle bad input. You can handle bad input by exiting your program, or you can handle bad input by asking the user to enter another value. In that second case, remember that you must always have a way for the program to end. So you might, for example, say, try again or enter Q to quit. We are not going to do that now. That's a little bit later in the class. Let's just do a very, very simple check here. So we're going to have somebody enter the age. And here we're going to say if A is less than or equal to 0, we're going to print an error message. And we're going to do the exit command. And I'll show you how that works in a moment. And then if we get down here, that means the value that the user has entered is valid. Okay, so we're going to first check here. So we're going to run this program. Oops, I brought up a new window. That's fine. So if we go ahead and enter an age like 30, it works. Now if I go ahead and I run it again, and I type in 0, it tells me that it's not a valid age. Now, it says here my program's still running. Do I want to kill it? If you click OK here, the Python shell window will go away. And then you just got to bring it back up again. Right? Which you can do. Right? Or you can just type cancel, which means the program is ended, but the shell stayed. Now what you can see here is that it printed the error message, but it didn't get any further, right? So you didn't see the second print statement here. So here's your first step, how to just check for one type of value. Now let's make this a little bit more complicated, and let's check for a value inside a range. Okay, and I just made this up. We're going to have the user enter a number between 21 and 30. And so we're going to say if B is less than 21, we're going to say too low. And then we can exit. And then we're going to do this statement called elif. And elif is short for else if. and I'm going to say if b is greater than 30, print too high, and then I'm going to exit, and then I can go down here and say something to show that we made progress here. So let's read through what this says here. It says if b is less than 21, do something, else if b is greater than 30, do something. And I could do this as well, right? So in other words, I can do if followed by an elif, followed by another elif, followed by another elif, followed by another elif, followed by an else. And so let's try this and see what happens. I just enter a value there. So if I enter 20, it says I'm too low and the program wants to exit. If I enter 40, it tells me I'm too high and it exits. And if I enter 25, it tells me I'm just right. So now you know how to check for integer values being invalid, outside a range, inside a range, etc. You could have done this a different way, right? You could have said if b is greater than or equal to 21 and less than or equal to 30, do something, right? So remember that you always have the option to check for things being in ranges or outer ranges, higher or lower. You can check for errors or you can check for valid, right? So you can do it in either direction. I find that checking for error messages or checking for values and printing error messages is a graceful way to kind of manage the data of your program. So now let's do one more thing. So if I run this program here and where I'm entering my age, I type something other than numbers, I get a traceback, I get an error. This is bad, right? And so the reason why your program, you never want to see this type of error message in your program is if I'm the user, I learn something about your program. I actually see a line of code here. That could be bad, right? Imagine if this was a financial program and I had some secret formula, or I had some proprietary data, or I had a location to a file on a server somewhere. This information would show up as a hacker. I would have insight into your program here. It's also giving me more information about how to further hack into the program. So we want a graceful check for this error. So let's go ahead and add that. Check for illegal data, i.e. non-integer input. All right, why is that doing that? Okay. We're going to use this this structure called a try and an accept. So we're going to say we're going to try to run the command, enter a value greater than 100. And then we're going to say accept, not expect, accept. And accept, what that stands for, it stands for exception, right? And an exception is a fancy word for error, right? So I'm going to do this in the other direction this time. So I'm combining my two error checks here. First, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my input and put it in the variable C, and I'm going to get an error message if I enter something that's not an integer. And then after that, I'm going to check for the data being valid, right? So there's illegal data and there's invalid data. And so let's go ahead and run this and see if this works. See if I got it right on the first try. So we enter that age for the first time. We enter that first number. Now here it's asking me to enter a value greater than 100. So let's just make sure it works for that case, and it does. So I enter 101 and it works. Oops, sorry. I got to make sure I do valid inputs here. Now I'm going to enter a value that's less than 100, 99 in this case, and it tells me. So now so this part works right here. Now let's see if the new piece works or not. And I'm going to type ABC here. And it says, nope, that was not valid input data. And then it asks me to kill. So I should change that to legal input data. So now this code right here is enough for you to be able to do your basic error checking for integer values, both for valid data and legal data. Where I posted the link to this video, I'm going to post this code as well so that you can try it.